Hey, I'll just ignore that announcement from GoToWebinar. This is Richard Jones from Railway Industry Association, from the Technical Innovation team, in fact, at Railway Industry Association. Welcome to our Unlocking Innovation seminar series this week, delivered as part of the Leeds Digital Festival. So welcome to from Leeds and the West Yorkshire area. In conjunction with UKRRIN, the UK Rail Research and Innovation Network, the university network, and supported by Network Rail, who are making it possible to put these events together and do that and present them free and open to everyone. So you might be asking yourself what the Railway Industry Association is. Well, we're the trade association for suppliers to the rail industry, and members cover the whole rail system. They're infrastructure builders and maintainers, they're rolling stock builders and maintainers. They create signalling and control systems, communication systems, and they number some of the largest global corporations, people like Hitachi, Bombardier, Thales, Alstom, and even IBM. But still more than 60% of our members are SMEs. So we cater for businesses of all sizes, and we try to look after everybody equally. As a trade association, we do the things that members can't do on their own. So things like political lobbying and things like that. What is Unlocking Innovation? Well, it's our branded conference series that's actually been running for over 10 years. So like everybody else in engineering technology, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, aren't we? What we're trying to do with Unlocking Innovation is highlight to suppliers the challenges that we have in our industry. There are things that need doing in the rail industry. We hope to share resources with you that are there to help you drive innovation into our industry. We're also there to give SMEs the chance to pitch their innovative approaches to a wider audience. Normally, at physical events, we allow SMEs to exhibit their work, and also we provide a great space for networking. And we can't quite do those, but the networking thing, we've got Q&A. And if you look at your tab in the right-hand corner of your screen, you've got a dashboard there, sorry, with a questions tab on it. You click on that, you're able to type questions in there that our speakers can read and respond to. And then we'll have a Q&A session at the end as well. Overall, what we're trying to do is we're trying to create new supply chains, to do new things, and also to refresh existing ones. Domain knowledge is really important in the rail industry, and as a result, you can pick that up by collaboration and partnership with companies that already work in the industry. RIO is a great hub to work around to find and make up those collaborations. So a challenge session, which is where we'll start, bringing rail into the mobility as a service environment. Really pleased to introduce Felicity Osborn, who's a program manager within Network Rail, and she's going to tell us about some of their key programs that pertain to mobility as a service. So Felicity, camera and mic on, please. Great, and I'll hand over to you, Felicity.
Hello. Hi, thank you. Thank you, Richard. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. So good afternoon. My name is Felicity Osborn. I work within the Research, Development and Technology team as a Programme Manager for Shift2Rail. Today I'm going to be talking about some of the projects we have going on linking to mobility as a service, and then some of the opportunities within the programme. So just as a bit of context, for those of you that aren't aware, Shift2Rail is a €920 million R&D programme, which is part funded by the European Commission and part funded by its members, of which Network Rail is a founding member. Shift2Rail has some ambitious objectives which are looking to address the challenges of punctuality, capacity and customer experience that exist in the rail sector. So the programme is split into 6 innovation programmes. We have IP1, which is looking at rolling stock. IP2, looking at command control signalling. So this is automatic train operation. IP3, infrastructure. IP4, which is IT solutions for attractive railway solutions. And IP5, freight. And then we have one innovation programme that is looking at cross-cutting themes such as KPIs, noise and vibration, and standardisation. So Network Rail is involved in 5 out of the 6 work streams. We don't tend to get involved in the freight aspect. The projects are split into open calls, So that's where non-members can form a consortium and bid for 100% of the funding from the European Commission. And then members' calls, which are exclusively developed and delivered by members of Shift to Rail, both founding and associate. So today I'm going to be talking exclusively about IP4, Attractive Railway Solutions. However, if there is any interest in the other innovation programs, then my contact details are at the end and you're more than welcome to get in touch with me. Oh, sorry, I need to go back. So IP4. As mentioned, the innovation programme is focusing on developing IT solutions for attractive railway services, and the ultimate end goal is that we develop a multimodal system that will enhance customer experience. So if you think about when you're travelling to somewhere and you go out of your front door and you need to take a bus, a train and a plane, and you have an app on your phone and it will have all of your tickets ready to hand, and then if your bus is delayed, it may deploy you onto the next best mode of transport automatically, and it would debit the cost or reimburse you as necessary. So the IP is split into what's called technology demonstrators, which I'm going to shorten in this presentation to TDs. So at the end of the programme, each of these technology demonstrators will have been established, and we're looking at hitting TRL 7. So for IP4, this will be about developing a one-stop shop ecosystem, and this will encompass all the key aspects of travel. So if you think about your shopping, your ticketing, your navigating, after sales, planning, and as mentioned, it's going to be door-to-door and completely multimodal. So the key projects in IP4, so this slide just has 3 of the members projects that are currently live. There are 2 other projects which have concluded, which were called Attractive and Coactive. You may see a bit of theming in the names. So three live members projects. These are Cohesive, Connective and Massive, which I'm going to go into a bit more detail about. Cohesive is focused on bringing together all of the technical innovations developed in the IP4 project. So this is both the members and the open calls. Connective is focused on creating the technical backbone to support the digital transformation of rail. So this will focus on the interoperability framework and business analytic requirements that are needed. Massive will continue the work of the previous projects, Attractive and Coactive, in the areas of trip tracking, travel shopping and ticketing, and the development of a travel companion. Massive is actually coordinated by Network Rail. However, the extent of our active involvement is more around the coordination and dissemination. So I'm going to talk in a bit more detail about each of the projects. So Cohesive. As mentioned, Cohesive will be bringing together all of the technical innovations developed in the IP4 project, hence the name Cohesive. It will look at applying engineering consistency management, so the development of a methodology and guidelines and things like a common glossary. It will look at identification of major mobility distresses which are felt on the multimodal transport environment, so things like persons with reduced mobilities, how much they make up of the transport system and what challenges they have. So this will be done by defining user profiles and personas. So we've actually been working quite closely with CPC in this area, and it will also look at testing and integration, which leads me nicely into the opportunities. So how can you get involved? So as I said, we're working quite closely with CPC in the areas of user profiles and personas and making sure that the UK industry is represented in this area. But we do have some gaps, and that's kind of where I want to appeal to the market. So do you have any experience in dissemination and communicating innovation? We're looking at doing route to market studies. There's a whole work package around testing and integration. So this will look at development of the test cases, testing results, the integrated technical demonstrator, KPIs. And then we have a work package looking at demonstration. So this is defining the demonstration, the planning, the execution, the data interfacing, and this is where we need support. Moving on to Connective. So the Connective project, as mentioned, will focus on the digital transformation of rail and other transport modes. It will look at bringing together various data sets and identifying how this can benefit both the travelling passenger. So, for instance, if you're aware of disruption, then being automatically deployed onto the next best mode of transport, as well as benefiting travel service providers. So if you know your passenger flow is going to change, that might help signallers, might help those working in stations, etc., etc. Again, in Connective, what are the opportunities? So there's a good opportunity here. Network Rail is involved across the board in the project, and we are keen to add value in the business analytics work stream, but we do not have any capability in-house. So this will be about using the data available to describe, predict and base decision making and integrate it into the ecosystem into a more usable way for passengers and train service providers. The method would need to have anomaly detection to ensure resilience and reliability within the system. So if you have a capability in this area, please get in touch. Massive. So Massive stands for Mobility as a Service. This is all about enhancing the outputs from the two previous projects, Coactive and Attractive. It has 5 main objectives, and these are about creating mobility packages and offering passengers the best price and how it integrates into the ecosystem. Improving the functionalities that the IP4 ecosystem offers the service providers, enriching the customer experience by innovating the traveller's interface, experiences and services, integrate a compatible approach to include mobility as a service in the IP4 ecosystem, and enhancing the existing IP4 functionalities. So this resonates quite closely with Network Rail's Putting Passengers First campaign. And as most, well, hopefully most of you that have joined this session are rail users yourself. And so you can resonate with the benefits that having a complete one-stop system will have, and how it will completely revolutionize the transport experience and make rail and other forms of transport more attractive. So I'm going to finish up on some further opportunities in IP4, and hopefully I've not gone over too much time. So in addition to the 3 members projects that I've just run through, there are 2 further projects which are going to launch later on this year. One of them is a members call and one an open call. So the open call is open for anyone to participate in. You would need to form a consortium with other members across Europe. So if you follow the link on the slide, it will take you to the European Commission portal where you can find the full call text and apply. The deadline has been extended to the 27th of May, but obviously that's still not long. So this will focus on the integration of the IP4 system, bringing together all the travel modes. It will be working quite closely with the members project Cohesive, and the project is looking to develop 3 demonstrators. So one around urban, one rural, and one how it will integrate with long distance transportation. So mostly air and road. And then we have a members project that Network Rail will be participating in. It has a working name now, which is going to be called Immersive. I don't come up with the names. It will be focusing on preparing the complete IP4 ecosystem for implementation and looking at how the system can be adapted to new technologies, so essentially future-proofing. And all the necessary travel interfaces, both on the operator side and the infrastructure manager side, and as well as the retail offering. So if you would like to find out more information, then please get in touch. My contact details are on the slide. You can also find me on LinkedIn as well. Otherwise, thank you for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions, minus the Brexit question, because I do get asked that on a daily basis.
That's okay. We've got a really good answer to that one, actually, Felicity, ready. So thank you very much indeed. That was comprehensive and extremely well presented. So thank you. Some great opportunities there for companies to get involved. It isn't very often you get an organisation the size of Network Rail that's willing to go out to suppliers so openly. So thank you for that. If you hadn't figured out already, then if you go to your tab set in the top right hand corner, you'll see one labeled handouts, and you can actually download the slides from there. Early part of next week, they should also be on our website, on the innovation community on the RIA website, which is riagb.org.uk. In about 24 hours, you'll get an email with a link to download the recording of this webinar. And of course, you can ask questions through the questions tab on your panel. And we'll have a panel discussion with all of the other speakers at the end, hopefully sort of 15 or 20 minutes. So there's a whole bunch of challenges in this area. Now, there is an organisation that Felicity mentioned called the Connected Places Catapult, which has got all sorts of tools and facilities to help you with addressing those challenges and growing your business in this sector. And Alex Whedon from Transport Systems Catapult, as it was now Connected Places Catapult, sorry Alex, is going to have a chat with us now. So Alex, can I hand over to you, please?
Absolutely. So good afternoon, everybody. Firstly, thank you, Richard, for the introduction and for the invitation to speak today. I'm, as it said on the slide, Director of the SME Development Programme at Connected Places Catapult, and I'd like to talk about the programme a little bit and how we're trying to help unlock innovation in rail. Milda, can we move to the next slide, please? So just a quick resume. The CPC is one of the 9 Catapult centres set up to drive innovation and growth in the UK. We're focused primarily on accelerating smarter living and travelling in and between our communities. Next slide, please. And we do that, oh, back one. And we do that primarily by identifying suppliers and creators of innovative products and services, building demand for those innovations through, operations like this and activities like this, raising awareness and of the art of the possible and identifying potential funding channels. And we also look for new market areas for disruption. And of course, mobility as a service in rail is one of those ideal sectors. Next slide, please. So why we focus on SMEs? If we move to the animation, please, Milda, they comprise 99% of all firms. Next one, please, Milda. 33% of the GDP, and they also provide nearly half of the total employment. But more importantly, they are a really rich source of innovation. So final animation there, please, Milda. And that's really important for benefiting the UK economically, socially and environmentally. Next slide, please. So I guess what is the challenge for SMEs in transport and more particularly in rail? I mean, if we look at the whole spectrum from the earliest technology readiness levels all the way through to market, we see lots of really exciting research coming out of universities in rail, and of course Leeds, the erstwhile host of this event, is a prime example of that, as is Birmingham and a number of others. And further along, we see Innovate UK, DFT, and the rail industry as a whole working together to provide great opportunities to fund development of products and services through things like the SBRI programme run by Kelvin and the Innovate UK rail team. But SMEs in the UK are struggling to get the investment they need to grow compared to perhaps those in other countries. And on the right hand of this table, you can see that the VC tech investment in the UK is head and shoulders above all our nearest competitors. I've kind of excluded the US and China from this because they just go crazy. But you can see that we trail quite seriously in the transport investment sector. Now, these are numbers from 2018. However, even if you add in things like the ridiculous investments, in a good way, I mean, of Waymo and Hyundai into 2 UK SMEs recently, totaling about $200,000 total, we're still trailing behind, right? So this is really a symptom, I think, of a wider problem that they are struggling to get, with the best will in the world, the real commercial traction that investors want to see. The SMEs are struggling to get the commercial traction that the VCs want to see before they invest, because they need to get their return on investment, of course. Next slide, please, Milda. And I think that's where we at the CPC can try to help both SMEs and actually thereby the industry incumbents. We have a database of over 1,600 innovating SMEs at all levels of development, because we're trying to build a pipeline. And I think part of the journey in the way that we work with the SMEs is really important. And this slide kind of demonstrates how we bring them on board, how we identify what they're doing, we put them into our key domain areas and try to find support activities that are matched to their level of development and capability. And we try to then work with industry to provide a safe space to trial technology and explore those commercial opportunities. Next slide, please. So what we do is we have a whole bunch of different interventions, some of which we supply directly ourselves, some of which are supplied by others. We don't want to replicate things that are already out in the marketplace. There's already lots of really exciting support in different parts of the market, and sometimes the hardest thing is trying to find it, and we try to help with that as well. And what we do is we take SMEs through a various series of interventions, hopefully with industry partners, to get the SMEs ready for market, both in a product development, because I think that's sometimes the thing that everybody focuses on, but actually also in terms of organizational maturity. So you know, for example, some of the things that organizations struggle with is how do they turn their technology idea into a real product that answers the challenges of the market. And likewise, sometimes, you know, there's a struggle with that procurement question and those sorts of issues. And things like the Shift to Rail project are really good examples of where actually those sorts of things can start to move away or find a path through for SMEs to collaborate with organizations like Network Rail. Next slide, please. And so what we do is, along with our kind of academic program and various other activities, we feed into what we call our innovation factory concept, which is effectively a way to programatize and de-risk the innovation process. So on the left-hand side, those small little buildings that kind of represent academia and the innovating SME community. And on the right-hand side, you've got the large government-linked agencies and the market incumbents. And everybody understands the value of innovation, but sometimes there's a little bit of handling that needs to be done in order to help move that in a way that everybody feels comfortable with, and that's all about the de-risking piece. So if we move on to the next slide, please. Effectively, the factory kind of is comprised of a whole bunch of different things that we do at CPC, and also that our partners in various parts of our network also do. Within the CPC, we have about 150 market and technical experts, but we can tap into a community of thousands, potentially, of SME innovators and thousands of academics to help augment a supply and enhance that. And of course, we also have a number of CR&D programs. We've got our accelerator programs, which I'll talk about a little bit more later on, and a whole lot of other activities that I think are beneficial to SMEs and the industry as a whole. So next slide, please. So this is a really complicated slide. Obviously, I've only got 10 minutes, so I'm not going to go into it in great detail as I have on the other ones, but hopefully you'll get copies of these and you can have a look at them in your leisure. But fundamentally, this is the sort of thing that we do, for example, with Network Rail in our innovation factory that we're working on with them. And you may have seen some of the recent work on that around overhead lines monitoring, the yellow chain project, which I was amazed to find out is called the Flying Banana. I didn't know that, but I love that. And of course, more recently, I think the Station Innovation Project, which was launched just before the lockdown up in Manchester, Piccadilly. But fundamentally, Network Rail provides a whole bunch of expertise and some challenges, and we all sit in a room and work out what those really look like, what they really mean, and then we try to find people who have the solutions to those challenges and try to find ways of helping Network Rail work with those people to make things happen, whether they be in universities, whether they be SMEs, or even large organisations who, up until now, perhaps have only ever really functioned with Network Rail through traditional frameworks, which can sometimes be very constrained when it comes to innovation. Next slide, please. So finally, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Intelligent Mobility Accelerator, partly because we're just going through the selection process for cohort 4, but also because I think it's a really good example of how we're working with partners like WIRA, which is the Telefonica accelerator arm, and other parts of the industry to help identify the challenges and select the SMEs that can help answer those challenges. For the partners themselves, it's a really good opportunity, low-cost opportunity of interacting with quality, innovating SMEs and being able to select them against those specific challenges. And there are 10 SMEs in each 6-month cohort. We ask partners to invest in 2 cohorts, and so they get access to those 20 companies. What's really nice about it, however, is that keep banging on about the de-risking piece, but these partners work together really well, and they're finding ways of kind of cooperating in a very in a competitive environment, which is great. Next slide, please. And for the SMEs, of course, there's loads of great impact, which also then helps the industry more widely. Anyway, the SMEs get access to key customers within those partner organisations and further afield. And so far, the 29 SMEs that have completed the first 3 cohorts, of which over 50% had rail offerings. And by the way, we are looking for another rail industry partner because Stagecoach have now exited the rail industry. But they have secured 30 commercial trials, those SMEs, £37 million in investment and over £2.5 million in CR&D funding, and a lot more in commercial revenue. So one SME developed a £2 million commercial pipeline in 6 months, being involved in the Accelerator programme. And finally, I would just very quickly ask you to look out for a programme that is that we're going to be launching, which will be very much focused on rail. I can't say anything more about it just yet, but we're hoping that will come out in the next 2 weeks. So keep your eyes out on that. If you've got any questions, please email me, or obviously Richard will give you instructions on how to do it through the app. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Alex. And I can certainly personally recommend Alex and the Catapult team as bringing a lot of knowledge about SME development, about collaboration, IPR and contractual issues as well. So really useful resource for SMEs to engage with to move forward. So let's actually move on to the SMEs in just a moment. Just want to remind everybody about the questions tab up on the right hand corner of your screen. This is your chance to actually get questions in to all of the speakers today, and we'll have a wash-up Q&A session at the end. So the first of our SMEs, and actually a really interesting journey, is Sam Bussey from Instrumentel. And Sam, I'd almost forgotten for a moment about your relationship with Unipart Rail. So perhaps you'd like to tell us a bit more about that. Sam, over to you.
Definitely, yeah. Thank you, Richard. So as Richard said, I'm Sam Bussey. I'm the Sales and Business Development Manager for Instrumentel. The details are there. Please feel free to contact us if you've got any questions after this, if we can't fit it in the time here. As Richard had said, the Instrumentel is now a member of Unipart Rail. We did start life as an SME within spun out of Leeds University with focus primarily on how to get precision measurements in extreme environments. And over the years, we've worked in different industries, and we've got a wide range of expertise of capturing data at the epicenter of an explosion in Formula One engines, or to entire fleets of trains, which we now do. And that has been quite a significant growth over the years, to now being part of Unipart Rail, as we were acquired in 2017. We have a range of flexible and scalable solutions, including being able to monitor up to 1 million samples per second on a train that's running around. So I suppose the real question is, well, how does that apply to mobility as a service? And our main focus on that is about making maintenance more effective and more and able to cope with a changing environment. And I think if anybody's aware of how life works for rail operations, we can picture how it would work typically, in that we've got periodic maintenance where there are costly failures, and to cover that we hold high inventory because there is unpredictable demand. And more often than not, that can result in the blame game throughout the supply chain. And the result is both the costly failures and that we over maintain problem assets just in case, but there is a much better way. And that's what we mean by condition-based maintenance. I'll give a very quick example. This is data from a 3-car set DMU, where we've got over 26 sensors fitted to each engine. Very busy and would take a lot of time to analyze. At Instrumentel, what we do is take that data and turn it into information. So by integrating GPS data and running our algorithms over there, we're able to identify the problems and notify our customers when the engines have got low power. So that's the key, is where we're taking data and making it into something that the customers can do something about it. The maintenance can now be performed on the condition of the asset rather than trying to rely upon the OEM's timelines. And that's great, but how do you do that maintenance without the materials? And that's where Unipart Rail comes in, complements nicely. We call this the condition-based supply chain. And what this means is that we're pulling data from the assets, and whether that be the rolling stock or the infrastructure, we're bringing that into our knowledge graph database, integrating other sources of data and visualizing it for our customers, and then harnessing Unipart Rail supply chain experts to work with the suppliers and harness the logistics that we have to deliver what is needed when it's needed. So not only have you got a high-performing maintenance operation, it's supported by a high-performing supply chain, backed up with years of experience. The benefits of this are what's key. Why do all of this? And I think the number one benefit here is increasing asset availability and reliability, because you've got less downtime. You're predicting and preventing failures in service. You're also able to lower your maintenance costs by utilizing condition-based maintenance. You're not over-maintaining just in case. Improving the supply chain will have a huge impact on the 4 Cs, so carbon, the customer, and the capacity. And finally, it will lower the inventory holding for the customer. So Unipart Rail will hold the inventory, and utilizing just-in-time delivery means that you'll only pay for what you need when you need it. So you're not having to hold a load of stock for things. And all of this is underpinned by our value statement, that we address the challenges of the rail industry across the asset lifecycle by working collaboratively with our partners to deliver technology and supply chain solutions that improve performance, reduce risk, and optimize cost. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sam. And condition-based maintenance, something that's coming in across the industry, but everybody has to understand we've got quite an old asset base. We've still got trains kicking around the network that are over 40 years old. And, you know, whilst new trains probably come with condition-based monitoring fitted, then older ones need to be upgraded, and that's still a sizable market. Definitely. So that's great. Renee Perkins, City Mass, is going to talk to us about what City Mass does. So Renee, can I hand over to you, please?
Of course. Thank you, Richard. Good afternoon. Today, I'd like to talk about making rail information work for people with all abilities. I'm Rennie Perkins. I'm the CEO and co-founder of CityMass, a startup with the visions to transform the accessible travel space, particularly focused on railways as well as the other form of travel. So what is the problem with accessible travel? We know that it's currently inefficient in some extent, it's non-existent. And that particular problem is faced by 14 million people in the UK alone, 1 billion according to UN statistics. And the spending power for disabled households are 247 billion a year. Now, in accessible travel for people with limited mobilities, mainly due to the lack of relevant, real-time and personalized information. According to the research from Scope, 4 in 5 people with disabilities feel really stressed and anxious using public transportation, such as rail, trains and tubes. And according to Department of DCMS, 70% of people with disabilities are digitally excluded, meaning the current digital solutions in markets are not produced and presented in the right way that can be beneficial for people with disabilities. So we think an integrated solution is a must to solve that problem. CityMass is a B2B data platform using our proprietary deep mapping, machine learning, crowdsourced data to create that self-adapted layer that can present real-time accessibility data for a city. And it does in a way to deliver using our technology Cody that utilize AI to provide personalized digital experience. So the delivery of our accessibility information can be beneficial for people who need it the most. So how does it work? We have a streamed product to achieve that vision, efficient accessible travel. First one, data streaming helped railway stations, companies to realize and visualize those real-time accessibility information based on the individual's impairments, whether they're wheelchair users, whether they're visually impaired, whether they're hearing impaired, or whether they're cognitive impairments. Currently focus on autistics at the moment. We also have an end user face app called CityMass Assist, enabling the community to help each other to avoid the time wasted and anxiety they are facing when they encounter any problems during their journeys. For example, here, Emily can report the lift on that train stations out of service to help 10 other people to avoid the same situation, and she's rewarded in a form of gamification. Last, Cody, but not least, we consider it as a secret sauce of CityMass, where we be able to embed this digital technology in any digital interface to enable the seamless delivery of digital solution for people with impairments. It uses AI and machine learning and anomaly detection engines to change in UX UI element to adapt the user's needs. So to achieve the visions when every single interactions they have is successful with any digital products and services. So if you have any questions, more than happy to answer. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Renee. And really, really important that we take people of different abilities and all sorts of difference essentially into work in mobility as a service. Just a little tip, maybe have a conversation with Alex Whedon. Some of his colleagues at Connected Places Catapult are doing some really groundbreaking work in user experience for people with visual impairment and so on. So probably worth a chat afterwards, I would have thought. There's some great expertise there that you could build on potentially.
Brilliant, okay. Thank you.
So let's move along to the third of our SMEs, which is Alex Chaplin-Howes of Tandem. And surprisingly, perhaps for Tandem, he's on his own. So if you can manage on your own, Alex, I'm going to hand over to you now. Thanks.
Thanks, Richard. And surprisingly, for a rail-focused event and a business called Tandem, I'm actually going to start by talking about buses. In towns, peri-urban areas and more rural areas of the country, buses are broken. They are, and the lack of buses creates barriers to people getting to work, accessing hospital, getting to leisure venues, getting to affordable supermarkets, seeing their friends and family, and indeed connecting with the wider transport system, especially train stations that aren't in the middle of town. And yet, sorry, my slides are jumping around. And yet there are hundreds of people trying to build companies that are designed to solve this problem. It's just that almost all of those companies are focused on the vision of smart cities and not these towns and more rural areas where actually the problem is much greater. And so Tandem, our business, is a startup working to build the next generation of mobility for these towns and more rural areas, which are otherwise going to get further and further behind than they are already. And to do that, we're taking the 21st century transport technologies emerging in big cities and adapting the models to thrive in these smaller geographies. So our first service is what we're calling the first ride-sharing model built specifically for towns. And so we partner with local taxi companies and turn their vehicles into shared microbuses. In other words, we find people, there's a pole jumped up in front of myself. We find people traveling roughly the same way at roughly the same time. So for the 8:14 leaving Wellingborough train station, we could find 3 or 4 passengers who are traveling to that train and make sure they all get there, pick them up one after the other around the town, and each person would just be paying for their seat rather than the whole taxi. So the price is akin to a local bus, but on journeys that aren't currently well served by traditional bus services. And as I say, this is a model that we borrowed elements of from big cities, but there's a range of ways that we're adapting the model so that it can thrive in these more rural geographies. So, for example, we're doing this in partnership. Partnerships are key to this. So our initial partnerships are with recruitment agencies who are struggling to place people in out-of-town industrial estates. We're now looking to start partnering with stations and rail providers because, again, this same problem exists. How do you get people to these sites that aren't well connected by traditional public transport? Again, we partner with local taxi companies. The Uber model won't work in these smaller towns. Partnerships with local taxi companies who are already there do. And then final thing is that this isn't just lifting the same technology. This is a completely different user experience that we're designing to thrive in these smaller geographies. So one of the examples that we've learned is that people want to be able to book by a guaranteed drop-off time. So if they are getting the 8:14 from Wellingborough to St Pancras, they need to be there at 8:10 at the very, very latest, so that they make their train or they arrive at their shift on time. Not on the city-based models where you book by your pickup time. So these are two amongst the many ways in which the model is being adapted. And as I say, we've started with the recruitment agencies, and we're now looking at the opportunity to serve stations as well. Thanks.
Sorry, are you done, Alex?
Yes, I think so. Sorry, it was a bit disrupted by the slides going all over the place. Not quite sure what's happening.
Oh, that's okay. It's a bit laggy when you press for the next slide because you're running off a remote screen effectively. So it's not a problem. You got your message across very well. It isn't heresy to talk about buses in a rail environment. Actually, plenty of people, me included, part of their rail journey includes a bus journey. So the interface between buses and trains is absolutely key. And we all know from work done by Connected Places Catapult in the past that it's actually modal interchange is one of the most difficult and stressful parts of a journey for travellers. So it's actually really important. Okay, so Milda, I'm just asking, Milda's got a poll she's put up around some important questions that Ria wants to pose to you around this issue of mobility of service and how it interfaces with rail. So Milda, you're actually going to bang that up. And can people answer that now in their own time?
Hi, this is Melda here, everyone. We would like to launch a poll and just ask you a couple of questions. So if you could just answer them, that would be great. There are 3 questions, and you should be seeing one now.
Okay. Do we have to launch that ourselves in order for it to be interactive and clickable? Because I don't, the screen I've got up, the quick poll, is actually not reactive to clicks.
Okay, never mind. Let's just move on with the Q&A.
So I think okay, so what we're viewing on the screen is the results, and then we should be able to click into that.
Richard, you click into it on the poll
Tab, yeah.
There's polls on your drop down.
If you've got that working, David, do explain to us how that works. Okay, I've now lost the poll tab, I'm afraid.
I think we move on.
Okay, so questions and some answers and some discussion, I hope, you know. Let's have a look at that. Okay. So what have we got that's good? If we can have all of the panelists back, please. Okay. So question from Mark Bird, really aimed at Alex Chaplin-Howes. How will the potentially new social distancing rules in the medium-term future impact tandem and city maps? How do you think that's going to impact on transport?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. We think potentially it might have the opposite impact to the one that you could imagine. So, for example, I think the assumption is that because of the social distancing measures, people will be less likely to want to use public transport. We think it may mean they're less likely to want to use very busy buses with 20 people who could be any people from across the city, or even bigger numbers. You'd be jammed into a very confined space. With our vehicles, they tend to be smaller. You're interacting with a smaller number of people. Obviously, the space is more confined, but overall, A, you're with a smaller number of people, and B, we know who is in the vehicle with you at all times. So if one of your fellow passengers was diagnosed with coronavirus, say, then we're easily able to communicate with everybody that you have travelled with. And obviously that isn't the case for traditional public transport. So we have a longer answer. I think that's the short version, and happy to chat more if that's of interest.
So Renee, what's your opinion on that?
So from Citymap's perspective, we think COVID-19 has changed the travel behavior, because human behavior habits is formed within, you know, a period of times where so to answer that question, really it's to understanding why the travel is important, whether it's go to work, whether it's going to work or go to shopping or social or discretionary kind of activities. So from a Citymap's perspective, I think the kind of understanding the reasons of traveling and providing the right type of personalized information in the right time that's relevant for that form of travel, it's important. We even as a team, we actually went on a hackathon creating a workable app to provide risk-based routing based on the available COVID-19s, so to help people to avoid that busy areas, avoid crowded form of transportation, for example. So I think it's all down to really the kind of pinpoint down the reasons for the travel from our perspective.
Okay, thank you. And Alex Whedon, has Connected Places Catapult been doing any research into the impact of COVID-19 on transportation?
Yes, we have. Obviously, within those 150 technical experts and market experts, they are right now, as I speak, collating all sorts of information, mostly from public sources and mostly from other people's surveys, because one of the things that we've noticed in terms of surveying both people and companies at the moment, frankly, they've got more important things to worry about. So yet another survey isn't particularly helpful. So we're looking at how we can use things like companies with mobile network data, companies looking at social distancing, so people who actually have been involved in unlocking innovation in rail activities before, people like Vivacity and things like that, are looking at how people behave in these strange times, and we are looking at pulling together some information around that. As time goes on, that is a longitudinal activity that we're undertaking at the moment, in the sense that it's not something that's coming out now. We are conscious of sort of jumping on the bandwagon and just producing stuff for the sake of producing stuff during this time, not least because it's not helpful when everybody's being bombarded with sometimes very useful and helpful information. We're more interested in how people's behaviours have changed and what happens to both the transport network and actually the communities that we live in the world of COVID.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Okay, change of gear now. Really, a question I think addressed to Sam comes from David Shirres, who's editor of Rail Engineer magazine. Sam, how does condition-based maintenance take account of the need to package up maintenance so that it can be done in a bulk way when a train visits a depot?
Yeah, so I think the key to all of this is the collaboration with the depot team, actually. And it needs to take into account the dynamic planning that's required. We need to shift away from everything being time-based or mileage-based, and have in place other supporting features such as fully kitted materials and tools, so that I've got everything on hand as soon as you need to go. And we like to think of it more as moving towards the sort of Formula One model, where you've got a pit stop whereby the train comes in, everybody is ready, and you're then maximizing the availability of that asset. It's not a case it will happen overnight. It will take time to achieve these things, but the ultimate goal is about harnessing the most and getting the most out of your asset, so that you're not having it stood down waiting.
Okay, for Formula One, great target. I don't think we're going to change all the wheels on a train in 2.7 seconds, but it's a good aspiration to hold there. So a plea for help a little bit here from Francine Gilmore, who I think is probably from the DFT. She's asking us to ask attendees, delegates please, to look at the DFT regulatory review that it's doing on mobility as a service right now. The consultation rather, is open until the 22nd of May. So the more views that Francine and colleagues can get, the better. The link is actually in the Q&A section of your dashboard. But if you can't find it, we'll broadcast that afterwards as well, I would think. Okay. So really a question for Alex, I suppose, from Anon. What are the barriers to introducing mobility as a service, and what is CPC actively doing to overcome those barriers? Alex Whedon.
So the barriers, I think, are largely the sorts of barriers that I think I kind of touched on in my PowerPoint presentation. I think primarily, we have very traditional supply chains, and things like the way that we as an industry procure solutions to problems is a very traditional way of doing it, i.e. you set a specification and you say, give me what you gave me last time and make it 10% cheaper. Whereas I think mobility as a service requires a bit of a mental shift in terms of understanding, what are the outcomes you want to achieve, and how you do that. And I think that's part of the reason why a lot of SMEs working in the mobility as a service area, and I'm sure Renee and Alex will attest to this. It is really hard to actually get the traction in the marketplace, and that's not, they don't get interest, and I'd be really interested to hear their view on this. There is a lot of interest. People like to talk to these SMEs, trying to understand what's going on, try to understand how they can apply that technology into their normal day-to-day working. But actually, just the way that the industry sort of procures and is structured makes it very, very hard to do that. And of course, there is a lot of work going on around that, and we are involved in doing that in our challenging procurement program and various other things, and some work that we've done with Network Rail as well. And we're starting to see that opening up, but that's not going to happen, you know, overnight. But hopefully, it will happen as, you know, people start to see the benefits of the things that those sorts of SMEs have to offer, and really, you know, that I think is the biggest challenge, is just getting into the supply chain, getting the supply chain to understand the benefits of mobility as a service.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Should we ask Renee what's your experience been?
I share Alex's view in terms of long procurement process and difficult to access the big guys, if you like, like Network Rail, etc. And I agree. There's a lot of open calls and programs out there doing that, but it's a little bit fragmented as well. It's just like the whole kind of MaaS systems also kind of fragmented as well. So we talk about MaaS, we talk about multimodals, but then each industry have their own associations and they're doing their own little things to improve it. It's still that kind of MaaS system. A seamless MaaS system is never going to be achieved unless the industries actually, you know, work together. Particularly, you know, for big industries like rail, bus, tube, authorities. It's complex, and inherently it will be complex because there's many different stakeholders have different interests, etc. That, you know, to achieve that efficient MaaS, and I think to start with that is to collaborate across industries, from rail, buses, authorities, governments, and there's a lot going on. It's just the cohesion is not there to achieve that kind of ideal states of MaaS, in my opinion.
So it's really going to take some structural change across the transport industry to really make it happen. Alex Chaplin-Howes, is that your experience and your expectation?
I think it's probably too early for us to comment on that side of things. The biggest barriers more broadly that we're facing is the extent to which so many of the decision makers are people who live in big cities. Investor-wise, for example, the majority of investors we talk to either work in London or live and work in London. And so their lived experience of transport and the barriers for everyday people moving around their lives is limited to London. And London's got the most incredible transport system. Whereas if you move out to Wellingborough or Skelmersdale, things are very, very different. So trying to explain the context to people before you've even started to explain what your solution is, I think is the biggest challenge we've faced.
I got caught in the microphone mute trap there as well. Okay, so we have a question who's asking Felicity. I hope you're still there, Felicity. Can't see you at the moment.
Oh, can you not? Hello, can you hear me?
No. You've got your camera on.
I can see you. I can hear you.
We can see
Felicity.
It's Richard might have got his screen set up wrong.
Okay. So the question is around, you talked about the deadline for shift to rail applications being next month. It's really quite a short period of time. Is it practical that companies could get involved at this stage in the open call?
That's a very good question. I suppose the short answer would be,
if I'm an SME, I want to know, should I be getting started on a bid now, or is it simply late to get involved in a bid? I should be looking around for somebody already bidding.
I have heard of organisations that have managed to put a bid together in a week. So it's not impossible, I would say. I mean, if you've got a great idea, it's probably going to be dependent on those that you're able to collaborate with you, those in the consortium. So it's not impossible, and certainly I would encourage it, because particularly from Network Rail's perspective, we need SMEs to be involved in the open call process to fill the gaps and the niche areas that we as infrastructure managers and sort of the bigger suppliers cannot fill. So I think don't get me wrong, it's a challenge, but I think it can be done. Okay,
and on the closed call, they can work with yourselves and others to make proposals.
Yes, yeah. And that's not exclusive to the May deadline. So we'll obviously be part of submitting the proposal in May. But what we do tend to do is submit our proposal, and then we start generating who we're going to work with. So I would encourage anyone to start the conversations with us now, but it's not limited to the end of May.
And then in terms of the project funding, that funding rolls on for some 3 years, I think, after the closing date.
So the projects that are due to go live at the end of this year, the joint undertaking has recommended that they last for a duration of 30 months. They don't want to see any projects go beyond 2023. So 30 months is the optimum, but it can be longer, it can be shorter.
Okay, and we had a question from Bharat Patania, who's asking about the massive project. Are you also considering integrated ticketing? And if you are you talking with Rail Delivery Group and with local authorities about integrated ticketing?
So that's a great question, thank you. So yes, absolutely considering integrated ticketing. I think the challenges are how that interfaces with other aspects of ticketing, like refunding, especially if you're going to make it multimodal. And then one of the things that the projects are examining is group ticketing. So it's how do you do that on an integrated basis? So the challenge is that you can do it from a rail aspect, but then you have to amplify that to the rest of the transport sector as well, and it's how much appetite there is out there. But certainly from a rail perspective, be looking at integrated ticketing. And then to address the latter part of the question, so we've been involved with RDG on the Connective project, so we have been working with them, and we've not been engaging with local authorities because the challenge is that this is quite a long-term R&D project, and generally they want to have something presented to them in its final form than something that's kind of currently in development. But certainly in discussions with RDG, it's important to have them involved.
Great, thank you very much, Felicity. Okay, Milda, did you want to retry the poll? Yes.
Okay, hi everyone, this is Milda. You should be able to see the poll questions now. This is part of the Department for Transport consultation on mobility as a service, future transport services, and RIA will be submitting our response, and we would just love to see your views. So there are 3 questions. We're collecting responses now for the first one. Do you think railways should be part of the mass environment? So far we have 100% yes answer. Okay, so we have 38% of people voted. Fantastic. I will now move on to another question. Do you think railways are ready to be part of the mass environment? So if you could answer that, that would be great. So we'll then have a bit of a comparison. Very interesting results are coming in. Will be interesting to see. There's a bit of a discrepancy between should or can or could. So great. And then the last question, what is the biggest barrier for railway to be part of this mass environment? Just if you could choose one, you can choose 2, it's a multiple answer, but if you could choose one so we know the priorities. So is it technological, regulatory, commercial, or behavioral, meaning that people just don't want to change or are scared of change? And the poll will close very soon. If you can get your answers, that'd be great. Fantastic, good results are coming. Okay, thank you very much. That's it from me.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, and well done everybody for taking part in that. That's useful stuff to gather while we've got this good audience together. Okay, so to wrap then, just to let you know that you can still download the presentations from the handouts tab in the panel on the top right of your screen. And probably now going to be the early part of next week, excuse me, that you'll be able to download the presentations from riogb.org.uk in the innovation community. There'll be a video recording linked with you in about 24 hours. And we really look forward to working with you tomorrow, hopefully, where West Yorkshire Combined Authority is going to lead on the development of a 21st century rapid transit system for Leeds City region. Bear in mind, tomorrow we're running from 10 to 11 in the morning. So we've got a much earlier session tomorrow. So brilliant, everybody. Thank you so much to our speakers for your contributions. Really good job. Really appreciate you taking part. Thanks to all our delegates and to my colleagues as well, to Milda, David, and everybody else who's pitched into this, to our PR people that are trying to raise the profile of research and development in rail. Good job, everybody, and have a good afternoon. And we hope to see you along tomorrow morning. Thanks very much indeed.